I just loved research. I loved someone saying, this is a policy problem, and tell us what's driving it, or examine this issue, examine this question, tell us what you find. I loved it, and that's why I did it for so long. I had a political science instructor who was a graduate of Ohio State, got his PhD from there, and he was sort of quizzing me one day towards the end of my college career. You ever thought about getting a master's degree? And I told him I really hadn't thought about it. He said, well, I know some folks at Ohio State, and I think they might be interested in a student of your caliber. And I was just so impressed with particularly my advisor for the 2 years I was there, Professor Charles Adams. He was just a wonderful professor. And so I talked a lot to Professor Adams about my desire to further my career in research. He had a friend who by the name of Robert Cook, who was working in a research firm in New York City. And I did that for a couple of years. My wife and I had just been married. We decided to have a family, and I wanted to get back to my hometown, which was Richmond. And the only real research opportunity of significance was at the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission. And I spent my next 17 years there working on a range of public policy studies. 3 of those studies won national awards. And the one that was most intriguing to me was a study of the death penalty in Virginia. We basically undertook a significant task to see if we could model the effect of race on prosecutorial decision-making in Virginia. We actually went to every prosecutor's office, got the actual evidence that they used, looked at the evidence that was cataloged. We built these decision-making models to see if race made a difference. I love the research I did in general, but I was most proud of that particular research. Governor-elect Mark Warner won a surprise election for governor in Virginia. He wanted me to be his deputy chief of staff. And I said, I'm not really into executive branch administration. I really enjoy research, and I love healthcare. And so he called me back like 2 days later. He said, if you like healthcare, why don't you go work in my cabinet as the Deputy Secretary of Health and Human Services. Stayed in his administration for 4 years, but in a bigger surprise, Governor Kane was elected. And 2 days after he won, he called me and asked me if I would come and work in his administration, initially as his deputy, and then about 8 or 9 months in, he asked if I would serve as chief of staff. That initial opportunity to be chief of staff to a governor for a state of 6 or 7 million people, the massive responsibilities that are associated with that, all contributed to that experience being, probably one of the more impressive things that I was involved with. And then I got a call from Washington, D.C. said that the new mayor-elect be interested in talking to me about running the Department of Healthcare Finance. And I've been here ever since. Now I work for Mayor Muriel Bowser, and I've been, first I worked in this role, and then earlier this year she asked me to take on the dual role of Deputy Mayor for Health and Human Services. I tell people all the time, they say, well, lay out your strategy for getting where you are. And the only thing I can ever say is I went to 2 very good schools. I went to North Carolina A&T, and I went to Ohio State, and that program, and it's focused on systematic thinking, policy development, the process, the mechanics. They were just perfect bookends for me as a raw student, and they were instrumental in helping me get where I am.